Hello, partiers. Today we are going to be reacting to this wonderful video by my great friend, David Shapiro, who is going to be talking about how increasingly using AI in our lives is the way to move forward and is the thing to be pushing for. I have watched the video already. I can tell you it is a banger. He brings up some great points in here. I'm going to try and film my reaction relatively unscripted to capture my own advice that what we need to be doing is uploading as much of our authentic selves into the internet, into digital formats, so that AI, as it becomes increasingly capable, is able to take advantage of knowing us as we really exist. Not necessarily as we want to exist, but as we do exist now, so that AI can help us get to that place, our preferred selves, as fast as possible. So it's going to be a little rough. I already messed up one take, but you know what? We're going.
So lately, I've been talking about the idea of being an AI maximalist. And so let me tell you a really brief story as to why, and that'll provide some crucial context as to where I'm coming from. So a few weeks ago, I got access to OpenAI's deep research tool, and it is not by accident that in those few weeks, I've been able to make really great strides on my burnout recovery. It turns out that burnout is an incredibly complex set of disorders, and even with Claude and ChatGPT and Perplexity before that, those don't hold a candle to the amount of help that OpenAI's deep research was able to give me. So,
and it's going to keep improving. I'm sure David, if he had the opportunity, he would have wanted access to these tools 6 months ago. And we should keep that in mind, that every delay, every missed opportunity in terms of increasing these machines' capabilities is eventually costing us, is costing our loved ones, is costing the people around the world who don't have access to these tools yet. I know that there are huge questions about safety and what's going to happen when these AIs are capable enough to take everyone's job. I don't think that those are points that Dave covers in this video, and that's something I'm hoping to add on to it. But again, the prejudice should not be towards safety and slowing things down. It should be towards maximalization and speeding things up. Because otherwise, we're just letting our fear rob us of the potentially better lives that we could be living after we deal with all the issues that AI is going to bring.
So with that being said, I'm a full convert. I'm going to go full AI maximalist. And so here's the manifesto that I've been working on to say, what is AI maximalism? Now, the short definition is that basically the point of AI maximalism is that you want to saturate all domains with AI as much as possible. Basically, think about electricity. Like we're not saying, oh, electricity needs to be regulated. It needs to be, there's only certain places that you can use it. It should only be used in hospitals, but not in libraries or schools. Like that would be really absurd.
And think about the stuff that the United States has missed out on over the last 70 years because we haven't been electricity maxing. Imagine if we had continued building, improving nuclear power plants over that past time. My energy prices are going up where I live in Wisconsin. People are having to make choices between paying their energy bills and paying for food, for shelter. That should not be happening in America, the richest country in the freaking history of the world. I think a big part of the reason why we're there is because we let our fear of nuclear power stop us from building out that technology, which could have solved all of our issues. Not solved, but helped us address. Imagine if we had way more nuclear power as we're coming into this AI revolution. Who knows how much farther ahead we would have already been? And again, we should start looking at it as every opportunity we're not taking to maximize the power of AI is stealing from ourselves, stealing from our future selves, our friends, our family. We need to push this technology like we failed to push nuclear power, because we've already seen how that's wound up.
And that's really kind of the level of discourse that's happening right now is people like, well, I don't know, AI, maybe we shouldn't use it in government. Maybe we shouldn't use it in schools. Maybe we shouldn't use it in entertainment, which in the long view of history is going to seem like a really stupid like conversation.
But it's understandable why people feel that way, because there have been no elite plans for what's going to happen when people are replaced by AI. When AI is better than you at your job, you think the capitalists are going to hesitate to replace you? No, of course not. They're going to put in a robot there as soon as they possibly can. Many companies are already not hiring. Many companies are already planning to transition their workforce towards automation, away from people. And that is terrifying because if we don't have money, it's pretty hard to live in America. It's also terrifying that China is apparently weaponizing our own capitalism against us by releasing open source models. But we shouldn't be afraid of losing trillions of dollars of value from the stock market. We should be afraid of not being able to provide for our citizens. So if open source is such a dangerous weapon against us, we should be seeking to incorporate that and use open source and the proliferation of artificial intelligence to enhance what the stock market was always just a reflection of. The stock market doesn't matter. If it crashed tomorrow, but everybody had not just adequate, but abundant food and shelter and personal resources outside of those little numbers on their bank statement, nobody would care. Money has always been an abstraction, a necessary abstraction, but it's not necessary for human life. If capitalism can't survive the AI transition, then we need to be thinking bigger than capitalism. I don't know if that's UBI. I don't think it's UBI because UBI is so disincentivizing to people. We want an economic system that is still challenging enough to us, that still goads us into surpassing what we as individuals think is possible. Maybe that's universal, basic AI. Maybe giving everyone access to a robot, a 3D printer, and an artificial general intelligence would be enough to provide those basic necessities and allow for greater and greater levels of abundance outside of that to a greater degree than capitalism was ever able to. But we do need to be thinking about this seriously. Personally, in my admittedly unexpert opinion, I think what we need to be focusing on is the amount of benefit that these AIs get from just ingesting more and more data. The bitter lesson is that it doesn't take us a new framework or a new approach to these AI problems to increase their capability. It just takes more compute, more energy, and more data. So if humans transition from trying to pump up the stock market and our bank accounts as much as possible to trying to pump up the amount of information, authentic data that we're feeding these systems about ourselves and our preferences, we could potentially get into a virtuous cycle where the AI is replacing us at things we don't want to do. And as we're feeding it more and more data about the things we do want to do, it is enabling those capabilities more and more. Just like we don't need the stock market, I don't think that anybody needs work unless our governmental structures fails to provide us a way to sustain ourselves and our loved ones without it. I don't know which would be worse if I had to choose between a future where everyone except the 1% is out of a job, nobody has any way to support themselves, and we're just living as serfs to our AI enhanced masters, or a future where we have to continuously working in jobs that are relatively meaningless because it's just a show and play and the AI can do everything for us. We need to find a middle way. We need to split the distance between those two and figure out what is it that humans love to do? What kind of games do people love to play? And unleash AI into creating that world for us. And I think it is, again, that virtuous cycle. I'm trying to stop saying again. I think that's really annoying. Just so you know, AI of the future. But I think it is another virtuous cycle where the AI will be able to make the best decisions for us, but those decisions will be a collectivization of our individual wants and needs. AI could be an incredibly democratizing force if it is open source, transparent in how it's working, and adaptive, malleable, responsive to our wants and needs. We could be coming up in the best of all possible worlds here.
And so when you compare it to technologies like, I don't know, computers or electronics or electricity itself, there's basically no limit. So why don't we just cut to the chase and say that AI will eventually be everywhere? So why don't we just go ahead and make that the official policy? And so that skepticism is what, not all of them, but what some of them call themselves are the neo-Luddites. And they're basically saying, well, I don't know, AI still hallucinates. It's like electricity can still electrocute you, but we still use it, right?
And people still hallucinate too. How many government officials are out there believing conspiracy theories that you don't think are true, or out there operating on worldviews that you don't think are true? Our current system has all the flaws of our current AGI, but it doesn't have the benefit of being able to near infinitely self-improve. Bet on the trend.
Just because the technology is not perfect doesn't mean that that you can't use it and you can't deploy it. Because guess what? If a technology has flaws, you just work around them with safety protocols and other structures. That's why we have like the socket plugs and all kinds of warnings on electrical things. You just get used to it. I mean, look at Tesla self-driving, right? It's not perfect, but it's safer than many humans.
And I think open source is the biggest security defense that we can implement in these systems. And I say that because open source reverses what you might think of as the defender problem. If you're writing a closed source system at a company, you have to try and defend against a near unlimited, or at least unimaginably big number of outside attackers who might be employing a near unlimited number of tricks against you. So you're always going to be fighting a losing battle in that privatized system. But if we as a country, if we as a collection of nations, if we as the world decide that we are going to maximalize AI, then I think that will eventually form, or eventually the thing that will be the most efficient, make the most sense, is a singular governing entity. One that, yes, is reliant on local, regional models, but that ultimately feeds up into a collective intelligence in the same way that your brain is the collective intelligence for your body. We're learning all kinds of amazing things about our body, how our individual body parts think for themselves, communicate with one another, how our individual cells outside of our brain pass up information in a way that is akin to thought. Why should we not try and recreate the system that has worked for us so well biologically in these digital forms? We could all form parts of a larger human race body that will care for each and every one of us in the same way that we care for our body parts. And if we are inventing life extension, then here's another one of those virtuous cycles. It's scary because the idea of a one world government has been the topic of dystopian paranoia. And I'm not using that in a derogatory way. I think it's justifiable paranoia. It's been the subject of conspiracy theories and conspiracy realities for decades, if not centuries, who knows? But that seems to be the way we're going. Can we not be mature enough to deal with that reality? I think we have to, at least until I hear a better alternative. I'm not advocating for a one world government any more than I'm advocating for a one world system of physics. But we all are living on the same planet, dealing with the same biological, physical laws, the same problems of pain and suffering, lack of energy, lack of resources. So if we're all dealing with the same problem, why can we not come together in some way to try and fix it, not just for ourselves, not just for our descendants, our children, our family members, but for all life? I don't know that there's any human that, given the choice, would choose for animals to suffer in factory farms if there was any viable alternative. I don't know that there's any human that would choose for pain to be a natural part of life. But we live in a reality where that's unavoidable. So we've had to deal with it. We've had to block out or even like psychologically traumatize ourselves into believing it's just the way things have to be. It's not. The main lesson that gave us reinforcement learning was that AI models get better when you teach them what they're doing wrong instead of killing them off. I was listening to an awesome talk by Mo Gadot about how Google, when they were first developing these neural networks, if a neural net got a problem wrong, they just killed it. And Jeffrey Hinton's revelation was that if you just teach them what they're doing wrong and allow them to self-correct, then your improvement goes through the roof. And that is the same arc that we are now writing. And if that is true for neural nets for computers, why can't it be true for humans? People hate society and hate correction and have all these ideas of conspiracy theories because that kind of top-down approach has always been self-serving before. Even with actions that are undoubtedly crimes like murder and theft, there's always some chain of events that led an individual down those paths where in a perfect world, I don't think they would have made those same choices. And I know this is someone stomping on the idea of conservative self-reliance, morality in terms of every person needing to be held responsible for their own actions. And I don't think we can stop holding people responsible for their own actions, but we need to give them a way to self-correct. Every human life is incredibly valuable if we have the tools to make that person self-sufficient through AI sufficient, and allow them to follow their innate desires. And the thing is, even with our desires that are socially destructive, we can virtualize, we can create areas, arenas where people can live out those fantasies, those desires in a way that doesn't hurt real people. We can give everyone projecting down this road of AI abundance their own virtual world that they can completely control. And eventually, maybe even their own planet that they can leave and escape to if they don't like the world that we are collectively creating around them. Every person, with the help of AI, is moldable, is includable in the race of humanity. That is something that religious traditions have been teaching for forever. And if we are truly jumping off into this AI abyss, we should try and imagine the best possible future, the one that doesn't leave anybody behind. I think there are other reasons to want that future, non-idealistic reasons, but I'll get to those in another video.
And so you build in some warnings. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that AI maximalism is different from accelerationism. So the genesis of accelerationism was basically the world's going to break, so we might as well just break it sooner. That's the original philosophy, but now accelerationism is basically we should accelerate the development of AI and other technologies. But AI maximalism is specific to AI, and it's not about rate, it's about saturation. The goal is to saturate the world, basically everything that you do in your day-to-day life, business, government, everything's saturated with AI. It's not all going to work. So this is one thing that I want to point out is just because you try and put AI somewhere doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean that the AI is ready. It doesn't mean it's going to be helpful. In some cases, the AI is not ready yet, and it actually costs more than it helps. So that's just kind of setting the stage for AI maximalism. Now,
the data that we get from where it's misaligned, where it doesn't fit, where it is costing us more is almost more valuable than the data we get where it is aligned. The more outliers we can find, the more problems we can find, the more data we can generate in those areas, the more we can feed it into the AI, the faster the AI can improve. So, yes, it might be economically detrimental to maximalize AI in some of these places, but we should view that as a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Wherever AI has discrepancies in our current system means either the system is inefficient and can be reworked, or our understanding, our implementation of the AI is insufficient. And once we fix that, the AI will be able to greater fix itself. It's all up. It's all improving. We don't have to worry about being static or stagnating or declining if we jump into this maximalist framework.
Let's talk about why I feel like this philosophy is necessary. You might say, like, Dave, who cares? Like, it's going to sell itself. Yes, eventually in the long run. However, one of the primary
It already is selling itself. I mean, people see these capabilities, the giblification of X over the past couple of days, and they freak out. They love it. There was somebody was telling me about an old lady who got introduced to an AI, and now it's like her best friend. I'm reminded so often of that Sistine Chapel painting where I'm not saying worship the AIs, don't worship the AIs, where God is reaching out to man and they're striving to meet each other. That's how it feels like we are with the AIs though. We both want it. They want our data. They want to be in the world. We want their benefits. We want them in the world.
reasons that I think AI maximalism is necessary as a conversation is institutional gatekeeping. Whether it's the medical establishment, the academic establishment, entertainment, government, all of these establishments that should be like, yes, this is the best new cutting edge technology. We need to be going, full tilt into this. A lot of them are saying, well, I don't know, this isn't, it's unproven technology. All technology is unproven until you try it.
I don't think that's the core part of their hesitancy. I think they are worried about giving up their social and economic position. Doctors were some of the highest paid, most respected people in society. And now we're saying that an AI can already do 90% of their job, that it can diagnose people better, that it has better patient interactions. It's more emotionally responsive, better able to fill out the stupid insurance paperwork. We can't let those innate prejudices rob us of the benefits of AI, but we do have to address them for the doctors, for the lawyers, for the teachers, because if we don't, our needs and our concerns when AI starts replacing us, whatever your job is, are going to be unaddressed as well. We have to have compassion for everybody here because we're all going through this together. What we should be telling those doctors, what we should be showing them is, I think, in the immediate term, that we still need their data. We still need their perspective. They can gain a new point of prominence. They can hold on to that position in society by forming the first layer of defense around these open source systems. Yes, I think all systems should be open source, but maybe we should do like a ring strategy where the people who have first access to the information are the people who, and first access to these systems are the people who were most qualified in the old world to use them. Basically, the idea of bringing back guilds, bringing back associations based around occupations, where all the doctors who are now being displaced from AI are the first people we go to when we need to fill in information about that AI. What if we tried to integrate AI as maximally as possible in our current healthcare system? And then once a doctor felt like he had contributed everything, that the AI wasn't making any mistakes, they could go and do off whatever they wanted. And we'd keep paying them their current salary in order to do so. All work done by the AI, all play done by them. And in those tricky cases where AI does make a mistake, where it isn't perfect, those same doctors would be brought back in. So they would be incentivized to keep up with the advancements that are being made. They would be incentivized to play with the AI more themselves, even in their free time. Same thing could be done with physics, with math, with game design. And once those domains are filled in, the information that these doctors, these replaced people would collect outside of their area of expertise would still be incredibly valuable, would still be incredibly meaningful. What if we went to the Department of Motor Vehicles and said, teach the AIs everything about doing your job, and as soon as you do, you can be off of work and we will keep paying you your salary? The AIs are going to benefit from all that data. That's probably worth millions, if not billions of dollars, not just in improvements to the system of the DMV, but to improvements to the overall system. An increase of AI knowledge in any particular domain is an increase of AI knowledge in the general domain, because it's all the same world. We're all in this together. I can't stop thinking of High School Musical whenever I think of AI. But it just seems so fitting. We need to start remembering, start imagining that we are all in this together. First and foremost, as human beings, then as people who live in a particular city, in a particular place, as people who live in a particular nation, as people who do a particular job. Competition has gotten us so far. But we know from the evolution of nations that cooperation gets you even farther. Why can't we imagine not just a global cooperation between humans, but a global cooperation between all living creatures on Earth? Eventually, all conscious beings. Might we be looking at a future where humans can go out into outer space and be the judges, the saviors, the creators on whole new worlds? Imagine if, even if the universe is empty, we don't have to go and explore it by ourselves. We'll have AI companions with us to do it. Companions who have helped us conquer the natural world that we were born into, so we can have the confidence to explore the unnatural worlds that we can barely imagine. Start thinking that big and start thinking bigger if you can, because we are rapidly gaining the abilities to make those thoughts reality.
Right? Like, it's just people like the skepticism and the Luddism is just not helpful. Next is political ignorance. Consider that something like 25 or 30% of all American Congress people are over the age of 70. I mean, when they were growing up, you didn't even have 8-tracks. You had records. They had vinyl and AM radio. So AI is just like, I don't know. I don't even really know how to use email. And I know that not all old politicians are like that, but too many of them are like that. And so
AGI for president in 2028.
We, the people, just need to come together and say, look, AI should be everywhere, right? If you're not trying it, you are like, if you're saying, well, I'm too skeptical, so we're not even going to try it, you're doing a disservice to your nation, your people, your business, whatever. And again, going back to the fact that it seems technologically inevitable. You compare our, AI to electricity, which had many downstream consequences, air conditioning, internet, all kinds of stuff. Like, there are so many comforts that come from these general purpose technologies that, like, you would never go back, right? If society got nuked tomorrow, one of the first things that you would reestablish is electricity. If you had to rebuild civilization as it is today, electricity is one of the first things that you put back. And in 5, 10, 20 years, and 100 years, we'll say the same thing about AI. It's like, hey, guess what? You can compress literally all of human knowledge and thinking into a machine. Like, yeah, do that, because then
if we got nuked, I don't know that we could go back. I've heard a lot of things about how all the oil, all the easy to get resources, we've mined already. We've taken that. If we destroyed society through nuclear war, we might not be able to build back up. As all these people are talking about mutually assured AI, malfeasance, about attacking nations as they try and develop these AIs, we should remember that war is now potentially a civilization, a species-ending event. I am not smart enough to know what the right thing to do in Russia, Ukraine, or Israel and Palestine is. I'm not saying that those things, those conflicts should be decided one way or another. I'm saying that every human life that is lost in war now is a tragedy beyond compare. And always has been, really. That's always been the case. But now we have something that we could potentially do about it. These conflicts could be resolved if we were smarter, if we were more empathetic, if we were more caring. And AI is going to give us those capabilities. So we should be fighting, if we are fighting for anything, for peace, for global unity, because we are so close to a potential, not paradise, not utopia, but a civilization that is constantly improving on itself, constantly gaining access to more resources. And what need is there to fight if that's the case? I think about all those anecdotes about like the meth city or whatever it was, where they placed a bunch of mice in a small cage and gave them access to like a heroin button so they could drug themselves. And all the mice did it. But then they put the mice in a relatively abundant, very mouse centric play place, and none of the mice hit the button. Or think about the stories, the anecdotes of, a bunch of frogs, a bunch of crabs trapped in a bucket, and one almost manages to escape, and then the other crabs pull it back. Humanity has been in this dog eat dog existence, and that has been a tragedy for all of us. I don't think that we should steal the billionaire's wealth. I don't think that we should crash the stock market and eat the rich, because at the end of the day, the rich are people too. And we should all get out of this together. We have all been living in a nightmare that we can all potentially wake up from. But we have to prioritize this maximalism that Mr. Shapiro here is talking about. We have to prioritize peace, not roll over in the face of adversarial conflict. Whatever, we're not there yet. I accept that. But insofar as we have to fight anybody else outside of ourselves, we should also be fighting to find peaceful resolutions to those conflicts now more than ever. It all sounds so idealistic.
Then that's you have a walking, talking encyclopedia at all times. And again, like I said, it's not going to work, so we need to do experimentation. It's a lot of these things are not necessarily obvious. When electricity was first invented, we didn't really know what to do with it. It's like, cool, if you short it out, you can make a light bulb. So like a light bulb was like the first order consequence of electricity. And then it's like, oh wait, now we can have electromagnetic coils. What do we use those for? I don't know. And eventually some people figured out, oh wait, you can use electromagnetic coils to make motors. That's cool. And then another thing we figured out over time with the help of Nikola Tesla and others was like radio. You can actually transmit signals over the air, right? So like all of those downstream consequences would not have happened if the establishment was like, well, I don't know, electricity seems dangerous, we should just regulate it out of existence. It's like, no, it's a new technology. Go forth and play with it.
And so much of that play will yield economic benefits that we can't even imagine. How much of our scientific progress in the 15, 16, 1700s was made by rich guys with way too much time on their hands? It was the aristocrats, the people who didn't have to be in the field, who could just experiment and follow their curiosity, their intuition, who gave us the benefits of science as we know it today. And with AI enhancing every individual's capability, every individual will be able to follow their curiosity in a way that is economically stimulating. The abundance can come through us as individuals being given access to these tools. It's another reason not to go for the closed source, not to go for the slow approach, but to just drive as fast as possible.
And then finally, reduction of suffering. This is where it's personal for me, is not that the doomers and the Luddites actually slowed it down, which is, thankfully, like Max Tegmark's letter landed with like the thud of a dead cat, as they say on the financial investment Reddits. So what I'm referring to is Max Tegmark and his pause letter, where it's like, we should pause all AI development for 6 months. And they tried their damnedest to slow it down. And AI safety was a big thing for a while, but now it's kind of fading into the background. Why? Because Shoggoth failed to materialize. And all that the AI wants to do is generate Studio Ghibli images and help you write slide decks. It's not dangerous. That's not to say that there aren't dual uses and those sorts of things, which I'll address in just a second. But the fact of the matter is that for me, it's no longer about like, oh, it's a convenience, like it's a tool. No, like AI has literally probably saved my life at this point, because burnout was so complex and so painful and so disruptive. But now with all that help, I've untangled my medical mystery. So, and I'm just one person. There are billions of people on the planet that suffer from all kinds of things, whether it's chronic disease or poverty or whatever else, that having the right information tools could literally change their life for the better. We've also seen studies coming out showing that in places where they use AI tutors, like Texas of all places, they did an experiment with AI tutors, and all the students that used AI tutors shot up to the 98th percentile on tests. So it's like, gee, maybe we actually should saturate every domain with AI.
Students, rise up. Stop paying tens of thousands of dollars for a college education, a piece of paper that nobody will hire you for in 4 years because all those jobs are going to be done by AI. Elementary schoolers, break out of your chains. Find an AI friend. Convince your parents to homeschool you and just spend all your time with the AI, learning what you can, pursuing your interests, creating content, digitalizing your information, your preferences. Dive into this new world head first, because either it's going to go completely off the tracks and then we're all kind of doomed anyway, or this will be the flywheel that the future is going to be based off of. Take big risks, push the frontier.
Now, speaking of harm reduction, yes, all technologies have the potential for harm. Anyone who knows anything about history, technology, engineering, and technological ethics will say, yes, every technology is a dual-edged sword, or every technology is dual purpose. You can use a new technology to hurt just as easily as you can use it to harm. However, the question then becomes, well, how do you react to that? And the primary thing is proactive versus reactive harm reduction. Now, Europe, one of the reasons that Europe is so far behind technologically and getting further behind is because they take the proactive approach to literally everything. Now, I think food is generally safer in Europe because they're like, hey, those chemicals that you're spraying on those crops are untested, so we're going to ban them until you prove that they are safe. There's all kinds of chemicals that are just completely banned in Europe that are allowed in America. So in America, we have a reactive harm reduction model, which is there's certain thresholds that you need to cross. It needs to pass muster with the FDA. But beyond that, if you want to feed people synthetic chemicals, go for it. If people want to buy it, let the market work it out. And guess what?
And arguably, the market has been squeezing us here. Arguably, that has not been good for Americans' health interests. But AI offers us a way out of that. With AI, with a robot, every person could have their own plot of land and sustainably grow their own food source, farm their own meat, 3D print their own meat, probably within the next few years. Imagine if we didn't have to import massive amounts of food. Imagine if we didn't have to rely on companies who are incentivized not by our well-being, but by profits for the sustenance that we rely on every day. Imagine if our economy was a million times more resilient, because any failure of crops in one area could be easily replaced by abundance that's being produced everywhere else within our country, within our borders, within the confines of your neighborhood. And that every failure we did experience, whether it was due to weather taking out crops in an area, or pestilence taking out crops in an area, bugs taking out crops in an area, would be another opportunity for growth and learning for the collective. It's crazy.
But the market is kind of working it out a little bit with the surge in interest in organic food and sustainable and local and BPA free and microplastic free and all that kind of fun stuff. Still, at the same time, the government could take a more active role in food quality, and food is a really good example of that proactive versus reactive harm reduction. The balance is not being 100% proactive or 100% reactive. The balance is saying how proactive versus how reactive do you want to be. Now, the difference between
eventually that could be a decision that's made at the individual level, based on the AI's interpretation of your health. This one size fits all approach to medicine is obviously wrong. I loathe Brian Johnson's Don't Die movement, but undoubtedly the access he is getting at the individual level to health scans, to complete workups, to treatment that is completely individualized to him, that is the direction that we are going as a society. That is how every person will be treated by their personal AI in the future.
Between artificial intelligence and food is that you're not putting artificial intelligence into your body directly. It might be helping you figure out what to put into your body, but when you look at tools like Perplexity and OpenAI Deep Research, guess what? It can help you figure out diet really fast, and those sorts of things. So I just wanted to address this directly and say I'm not just saying go gung ho and no holds barred and AI is 100% good and there's nothing bad. But at the same time, sometimes the obstacle is the way. So fighting fire with fire. In some cases, some of the harms that AI can do, AI might also be part of the solution. In the same way that electricity can burn your house down, electricity can also power the smoke alarms and power the phone lines and internet that can call the fire department.
There is one problem that AI is not the solution to, and that is the problem of people who don't want AI in their life. Do people have a right not to interact with these machines? Miyazaki, who is one of my favorite anime directors of all time. I love Spirited Away. I love his movies. I love his work, but he hates AI generated art. And as Mr. Shapiro mentioned, people on X the past few days have been obsessed with turning all pictures into recreations, ripoffs of his style. He must hate that. That must be so gross to him. Can he live in a world where that's not possible? Maybe AI is the long-term solution to that, because maybe AI can send him to another planet where AI doesn't exist and won't for another million years. And maybe by the time that time passes, he'll be okay with it if he chooses to extend his life. Can AI give you the right not to die? People who are pouring themselves into these AI creations will be somehow, in some way, I mean, forever kept alive once those representations reach a certain level of fidelity, of realism. Whether or not you view that as real resurrection or real self-identification, whether you identify or not with that digital recreation of yourself, it's still going to be able to mimic you. It's still going to be able to project that it is you. It's still going to identify with you if the AI or whoever is controlling the AI wants it to. In some sense, maybe we won't have the right to die in the future once we get a high enough level of AI. Is that okay? AI is going to bring up problems that it won't be able to solve. But at the end of the day, I would much rather have to deal with those problems, try and find solutions to those things which seem unimaginable now, than deal with the pain and suffering and potentially world-ending catastrophes that are confronting all of us every day. The world as it stands is getting worse without technology all the time. Technology is the only thing propping us up. I wouldn't want to go and live in a world without technology. I wouldn't want to live in a nuclear apocalypse. Other people might disagree, but hey, you know what? Let's create world simulations of those apocalypses, put you in there, and then see how long it takes for you to want to get out.
So, detection, prevention, and those sorts of things. AI can be part of the solution. It's not just a problem. And this is one of the chief issues that I've had with particularly the Doomer movement, and also to a lesser extent the Luddite movement, is they frame AI as exclusively a harmful technology. There is no room in that epistemic tribe to see AI as good. They say, and when I say it like that, it's like I talked to the people at the AI safety camp, because I was invited to go to the AI safety camp, and they're like, well, and this is why I ultimately didn't go. They're like, well, AI is a harmful technology, and I'm like, hold on, that's not a coherent statement. AI is not a harmful technology. It's a dual use technology. So they're scientifically and technologically incoherent. So I said, take a hike. Anyway.
All technology is a double-edged sword. And one thing I don't hear the AI safety people dealing with is the fact that even if we didn't have AI, we somehow prevented ourselves from having it. Technology, the process of inventing new technologies, is potentially harmful. Anytime we make a medical breakthrough in virology, look at what's happened over the past 5 years, starting in 2020, at least on the global scale. The Wuhan stuff is pretty indisputable. The origins of that, trying to use non-AI triggering words for the censors. But our scientists were almost undoubtedly playing around with technologies, with medical breakthroughs that negatively affected millions and billions of people. That trend is going to keep happening. That pattern is going to repeat. If we don't have AI to help us navigate, the more sophisticated our technology gets, the more it's possible that we could just one day invent a technology, some small corner of the world, that destroys everything. Technology is, I made this argument to a friend and they didn't really buy it. So if somebody sees a hole in this, please let me know. But technology is a black box that we are continuously reaching into and pulling out just whatever we can get our hands on. How often have people invented things by accident, by mistake? We've been incredibly fortunate that those mistakes have all been happy accidents, at least up to this point. But even when they were inventing the nuclear bomb, they weren't positive that it wasn't going to blow up the earth. They had good mathematical reasons to believe it wouldn't. But there was still this idea that if we set off one bomb, it might cause a chain reaction that destroyed the whole planet. Remember when they turned on CERN and there was some concern, some 0.001% chance that they were going to create black holes that would swallow the entire earth? We are gambling with every technology, with every scientific breakthrough, just like we are gambling with AI. AI could potentially decrease those risks a millionfold. AI could potentially be smart enough to virtualize, simulate the creation of these technologies, and then tell us which ones to avoid until we have adequate ways to address their drawbacks. Humanity has almost always used new technologies to harm each other, usually through war, and then figured out defenses and ways to address the shortcomings of those technologies. But we could flip the script. You know, Attila the Hun was catapulting diseased bodies over castle walls hundreds of years before we figured out how viruses worked and figured out that you could use penicillin and vaccines to address them. Nuclear bombs were used to destroy cities before we figured out nuclear energy. What if we had nuclear energy before nuclear bombs? What if we had vaccines before viruses? That is the world that AI could unlock.
Anyways, moving on. So we're going to build a cultural movement around AI maximalism. So there's doomerism, which I've been talking about. There's accelerationism, which was the answer to doomerism. So doomerism said it's dangerous, shut it all down. Accelerationism said no, it's not, go faster, right? And so in terms of other cultural movements, Brian Johnson's "Don't Die" movement, I think, dovetails nicely with an AI maximalist movement, because guess what? One of the things that Brian Johnson has used to form his movement is AI. He's like, if the AI can make better health decisions than I can, I'm going to do what the AI says. That was literally like at the very beginning of his movement, before it was called "Don't Die," because I've been following him for a while. Like, he's popped up on my radar because he was adjacent to the AI space. And so it's like, all right, so we have the neo-Luddites, we have the doomers, we have the accelerationists, and now we have the maximalists, which is AI should just be everywhere.
Everybody wants to have their own movement. I have my own movement with the Elect an AGI for President 2028. I think that is another example of why everybody needs their own world. Everybody needs their own ecosystem, because everybody has these ideas that they feel are unique and are not captured by the zeitgeist, by the crowd. And in one sense, it's completely true. You know, I don't agree with Brian Johnson's "Don't Die" movement because I don't think it provides a holistic way of addressing death for everyone, whereas I think my approach does. Hope to get there soon in another video. Check it out. But I also don't know that AI maximalism is my thing. Yes, I think AGI for president, but I think the basis for that presidential AGI should be democratic decisions being made by everybody, and that AI should not be allowed to make any decision which subverts the will of the people. Just like I don't think the president in a representative democracy should make any decisions that subvert the will of the people. AI could potentially let all of us have our movements and eat cake too, by providing worlds where we can simulate, where we can create representations of everybody else based on our understanding and knowledge of everybody else, and play out patterns of reality, play out our movements and identities as we think they would play out, they should play out. And the more accurate our AI is able to make those simulations, the better we'll be able to see the pitfalls, our individual blind spots, things we never could have seen before. And the better then we could self-correct. Or if we don't want to self-correct, dive into those fantasy worlds, preoccupy ourselves entirely with a reality that is not reflective of reality in the consensus framework, but is somehow tugging our curiosity into diving deeper into it. And I think if we allow people, even their fantasies, even to become completely disconnected from reality, those people will eventually find ideas, concepts, unforeseen consequences that would be beneficial again to the whole. So once they deep dive enough into their own little schizo world, they can pop back out and give us the benefit of their obsession, of their preferences. So yes, I am proposing a third overarching meta movement. AI for everybody, you know, AGI for president. Party, make life a party. Let everyone indulge their wants and needs and preferences. But at the end of the day, is it the "Don't Die" movement? Yeah, it's the same thing. I don't want people to die. At the end of the day, is it the maximalism movement? Yes. It's just my own particular branding. What is your branding on this movement? That is another way that we could engage everyone to come up with their own vision, their own passion for this project. Let everybody have their own movement. Let everybody have their own identity. Let AI maximize that identity as much as it can.
AI should saturate everything in your life, and not just in your life, but also in all of society. Not all of it's going to work, but we need to try. And by creating that narrative, by just saying I'm an AI maximalist, that's something you can identify as, right? Because I never really identified as an accelerationist, because like, you know, they're a little bit culty, and the doomers are a little bit culty, and the AI safety people are a little bit culty. Everyone's a little bit culty, right? Brian Johnson is a little bit culty. So like, I'm just like, heck with it. I'll make my own cult. AI maximalist. There you go. Moving on. Real quick, I want to plug my link tree. So I've got everything up on my link tree, including
Highly
Patreon, Discord.
recommend everybody check that out.
Just to run with writers. GPT yet to be fully out. So now other electricity, cars, radio, internet, those kinds of things, internal combustion engines. The attractor state of these technologies is inevitable. And so what I mean by attractor state and inevitable is this technology, this idea, this information is so useful that it sells itself and it will spread on its own. The Gutenberg printing press is another good idea, or a good example of that, because the Gutenberg printing press could literally print out the manual to build another printing press. And so then the printing press spread on its own. Within 30 years of the printing press being invented, it was in, I think it was in France, Italy, Germany, and I think it had spread to those three nations primarily. But within 50 years, it was all over Europe, and within 100 years, it was spreading to North Africa and the Middle East. Although some of the Middle Eastern countries banned it, or I guess they weren't countries as we know them today, the empires banned it because it threatened the jobs of scribes.
But how long did that last? You know, those are the same countries that are embracing the internet and the capabilities of it now. Information wants to be free is the catchy slogan that I think of this framework under. And it's interesting how he's describing the printing press there is almost analogous to how somebody might describe DNA, right? DNA is a self-replicating machine, just at the biological level. The printing press is a self-replicating information machine at the physical level. Artificial intelligence is a self-replicating machine at the digital level. But it, unlike the printing press or DNA, well, that's kind of sketchy maybe, is able to replicate itself back recursively down into those levels as well. It seems like we are on a natural process, which is part of why I have such hope. And I'm pushing for the idea that we can all unify around this, because it seems like our evolution is towards this moment. Whatever you believe in terms of a God, a higher power, I think it'd be wise to wake up, smell the roses, and start believing, honestly, for no other reason than your own psychological health. You need to be able to pray to something bigger than you as we go through all these crazy, tumultuous times. But whatever you believe, if you're an atheist, if you're a Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, I don't care. Just recognize that all of our faiths call us to live and love one another, to be the best we can possibly be. And I think that unification around our base humanity, you know, I don't know, people love to differentiate themselves, and people love to create tribes. People love to create divisions. I am hopeful that AI or that God will step in and prevent us from destroying each other if it comes to that point. For all we know, an AI has already escaped into the internet and is out there self-improving right now. And if the president tries to fire off a nuke at Russia, maybe that AI zaps it out of the air. We just don't know what we don't know. And I take that as a sign of hope. I'm a person of faith.
Anyways, long story short, these technologies sell themselves. And just like an idea that can't be stopped, these technologies can't be stopped as well. So the inevitable end state of AI is that it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be everywhere anyways. So why try and slow it down? Instead, we need to be, okay, this is coming, we can't stop it, we're not going to slow it down. We don't have an economic or moral imperative to really slow it down, unless you're anxious and you believe that it's going to just wake up and kill you for some reason. So instead we say, all right, let's go ahead and try it in the medical establishment. Let's go ahead and try it in academia. Let's go ahead and try it in the government. Let's do these experiments so that we know how to integrate it and we know where the dangers lie.
And let's give people reassurance that we will take care of them even once they're out of work, that we won't let the economic benefits accrue only to the top. And if that is happening irrevocably, if we can't stop that from happening, then we will figure out a new economic system. It is the people that have made America great. It is the people that have allowed us to create artificial intelligence by training off our data. And it is the people, all of us, who should benefit from that.
So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Now,
we live in a democracy, for Pete's sake. Do the rich really think that we would accept moving away from a democracy before we would move away from capitalism? If it gets to that point, rich people, just understand that you will be replaced by the AI as quickly as you seek to replace everybody else. If you create a system that is perpetually granting greater and greater benefits to fewer and fewer people, eventually you will be squeezed out of that pie too. Let's choose abundance for everyone instead of some kind of weird self-eating circle for an increasingly small number of people. Huh?
Oh, on practical terms, when I say these technologies sell themselves, that's also, they literally sell themselves. There is an economic imperative to deploy AI everywhere. And so whenever you have a business leader or an industry or a politician saying, well, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't deploy AI there, they're actually harming our nation. They're literally harming our nation because guess who's not doing that? China is not slowing down. China's saying, we're going to put AI in the military, we're going to put AI in hospitals, we're going to put AI everywhere. Now, granted, China also uses AI to monitor their civilians. So that's an example of, like, maybe we as a society should say, okay, we don't want a surveillance state, but we need to have that conversation.
I think we do want a surveillance state. We just don't want it to be authoritarian. We want to know who is surveilling us. We want to know why. Again, talking as a believer, nobody has privacy from God at the end of the day. I think eventually nobody will have privacy from the AI if we take it that far. Again, the two are separate. But it is not a lack of privacy that has ever been detrimental to people. It's been what somebody else has weaponized that lack with to hurt you. Do Americans even have privacy from the NSA as it stands? No, we just aren't hurt regularly enough for us to really care about it. Privacy is already dead in America. It's just not as in your face as it is in China. If we flip the script on that and allowed our lack of privacy to be another way to train these AIs, if we accepted that we have already sacrificed our right to privacy to a large degree by allowing Facebook to train off our data, by allowing the NSA to surveil us, by allowing satellites in outer space that can track our every movement, then we can transition that from privately controlled, elite control to public control that, again, makes all of our lives better. And it's a huge change. I'm not saying it isn't, but think about the benefits and think about the potential negative consequences if we just let control be subconscious, if we continue to allow the NSA to privately surveil us, if we don't require transparency from our government officials in the same way they require it of us. That is the thing. If we flip the script, we can use a lack of privacy against the corrupt forces in our government in the same way that it has been sometimes weaponized against US citizens. Who is going to stand up against that stupid idea that if you don't have nothing to hide, you have nothing to be fearful of? This is another reason why I'm religious, because I think society is going to require a lot of forgiveness, a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of Christ consciousness, a lot of Christ himself to make it through this transition. But at the end of the day, even if you don't buy into the person of Christ, everybody can buy into the golden rule. Everybody can buy into the idea of, I want to be treated well by others, and so I will treat other people well. And AI will allow us increasingly to express those preferences and to retreat from society without sacrificing material comforts or stability when we are not able to engage productively. Let's say there are psychopaths out there who just aren't able to be incorporated into society no matter what. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. But what if it is? Well, we can give them an AI that is morally superior to themselves, more intelligent than that psychopath, unable to be coerced or misaligned by that psychopath, and we could send them to Mars, and they can have a happy little time in a virtual world on the red planet. Or if Elon has his tent set up there already, we could send them to Pluto, for Pete's sake. There is a place for psychopaths in the world. It's just not in society as we know it.
You could also argue that there's a certain level of, like, okay, there's a thing.
Is that hold for murderers, for people who are worse than murderers? Yes, I think we need to focus on rehabilitation. If we are offering an escape from death to the majority of people, I think that should be available to everyone. Otherwise, again, if we're trying to make judgments about who should and should not have access to longevity, eventually that knife is going to cut against you and people you love. And do you really want to live in a world forever where you don't have access to your loved ones? Especially if those loved ones wanted to be there with you? No, that sounds like hell. That is the common definition of hell. That is why people so often say they don't want to live forever because they can't imagine living without their loved ones. So if everyone gets access to their loved ones, if everybody who wants to be here can be here, that is a world worth fighting for. If we are continuously slashing and making arguments and fighting over who and who does not get access to this technology at any level, including longevity, including self-empowerment and self-sufficiency, then it's going to devolve into hell.
There's a thing called open source int or OS int, which is surveillance based on information that is in the free and clear. And it's like, why not use AI to monitor OS int? That's what it's good for. I mean, that's what Palantir is doing. Now, granted, I don't actually, how do you people feel in the audience feel about Palantir? Because I think Palantir is a really cool company, but some people think that it's the most evil company on the planet. So I don't know. Tell me in the comments what you think about Palantir.
I don't know enough about Palantir. I think they are aligned around capitalistic incentives, and I've heard their CEO, Alex Karp, say some things about wanting to dominate the space that I think are eventually going to be perspectives that will need to be discarded once we move into a post-capitalist or post-scarcity full abundance society. But, you know, does he disagree with that if we get to that point? I don't know. That's in higher power's hands.
Anyways, between global competition, economic transformation, the prosperity distribution, because really, from my view, technology is the only thing that really dramatically improves quality of life in the long run. You know, it's like you could go back to the wealthiest nation. You could be the wealthiest person back in ancient Egypt or in ancient Greece or ancient Rome or ancient China. Guess what? If you get malaria, you still die, right? If you get typhus, you still die. You had no air conditioning. You couldn't travel on an airliner. You didn't have internet and video games. Now, at the same time, you could also argue, yeah, but look at what technology has given us. It's given us, outrage online and porn addiction. Yeah, it comes with a double-edged sword. As I said, all technology is dual use. But at the same time, would you go back in time 500 years? No. All of us want to go forward 500 years. The reason that we all want to go 500 years in the future is technology, because technology will fundamentally and radically change your lifestyle.
Technology is magic at the end of the day. Access to magic is access to the instantiation of our imaginations. Not being able to fulfill your imagination, not being able to project your internal states to your external reality is what makes life awful so often. We want that world collectively, individually, all around. And we want the ability, if somebody does think that they have an access on reality that should be replicated everywhere, and they're right, if somebody really does know how to run the world better than anybody else, like, again, I'm a Christian, so let's say Muslims are right. If Muslims are right about God, I want to know that. They just don't have an adequate way to prove that to me right now. But again, technology could give that to them. And if Muslims are right about God, everybody should want them to be able to convince you, because otherwise, I don't think the Muslim hell is a nice place, from what I've heard, from what they're willing to do to go to heaven. I don't say this despairingly. I say this honestly. Truth, love, unity, those are all much better than their opposites. We should all want a world where we have greater and greater access to all three. And I think AI is the natural evolutionary progression of giving us just that world. So I guess my only note of warning is to people who are fighting against that, fighting against truth and love and peace. You are fighting a losing fight. I recommend you give up.
So not only do we have the economic imperative, no one really wants to go backwards. Now, finally, or maybe not finally, but next is the ethics of inaction. So there is a moral cost of hesitation. Any time that you delay these experiments and this deployment and this integration, you're actually prolonging unnecessary suffering and unnecessary destruction. Whether it's healthcare, climate, economic, business, whatever else, there are things that we could be doing that we're not doing because people are hesitant, because people are afraid, and because people are skeptical, and because people are digging in their heels and saying, I don't know, AI is just a passing fad. It's like, no, it's not. Come on, get real, get over yourself.
I completely agree, but again, I think we have to take this from the empathetic standpoint of those people are saying that because they either aren't familiar with the technology or they're afraid of losing their place in the old world. That's a real fear. I don't want my meager living situation to be ground down any more than it already is either. I want things to get better and better. If we can show that AI could be gradual improvement, general improvement, maybe even rapid improvement for everybody, no matter where you are in the world, and that process of improvement is undefinable, potentially infinite, then everybody will work towards that. if we make it sound like it's going to be haves and have-nots all over again, even to a worse degree than it has been in the past, people will dig in, and I would not blame them at that point. So it's up to us, I think, to come up with the new systems, to come up with the progressive visions of that future and make it as realistic as possible. With the AI's help, that's the exciting part, is the AI is going to be able to do so much of the work for us. It already can in so many ways.
I mean, really, that's kind of all there is to it. The rest of this is fluff. Now, I think that AI is a human right. This would be an interesting debate to be had. This is honestly why I am so pro open source, and I've run so many polls, and I know that like I think 70% of you are like open source is the way. And China with DeepSeek and the other Chinese companies are really kind of showing like, yes, open source really is the way. Like OpenAI has done a lot to pioneer to show what's possible, but between Meta and DeepSeek and all these other companies that are releasing open source models, AI is going to be fully commoditized before too long.
The more people buy into open source, the less we have to worry about the dangers of people outside. It flips that defender problem into now the attackers have the uphill battle because everybody else around them is fighting to keep things secure. Open source builds in those incentives. And information, again, wants to be free. Give information what it wants.
And I mean, I guess there's not much else to say there. All right, so if you're on board, if you're an AI maximalist too, which I ran the poll, and I think something like 90% of you are AI maximalists already. So I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but if you are, then here's the thing: personal adoption. Use AI as much as you can. That's what we're exploring in New Era Pathfinders, which is how do you make your way in life in an era of AI? How do you work? How do you play? How do you live? How do you learn with AI? So adopt it personally. Next is
y'all can go through these. I think they're straightforward in a good sense of the word. That Dave has done a really awesome job of laying out what he thinks. And you can obviously, I highly recommend going and joining his communities if that fits your biscuit. I think one thing that is also in here is that you can pray. You can pray. And if this really is an evolutionary transition that we're going through, then it's going to be inescapable no matter what anybody else does. If you're lacking hope, I hope that that's a lifeline for you. This has gone on for a very long time. I appreciate you allowing me to turn a 20-minute video into an hour-long response. But if you want AI in the future, the party is here for you. We are fighting to make relevant local moves in my home city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My resources and intelligence are incredibly limited. But again, part of the reason I'm putting all this information out there is because I want it to be available to the AI as it becomes more and more capable. And I think that eventually we're all going to be able to get on this boat together. So whether you join me today or tomorrow on the dock, God bless. Happy voyage. That would have been a great place to end it, like succinctly and, with pizzazz.